Week 15 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few running backs I looked at on the wire this week. The first guy, Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. So a lot of people thought it'd be the Devonta Foreman show, and he'll get the bulk of the carries. But the last couple weeks here, Hubbard, he's getting the carries, and he produced a great ball game week 14 in Seattle. So the last few games here for him, week 11 at Baltimore, in that one, 2 catches, 25 yards. Week 12 versus Denver, 17 carries, 65 yards. And week 14 in Seattle, 14 carries, 74 rush yards, a touchdown, 3 catches, 25 yards. So right here, great workload, 17 touches once again. Week 15, I know not the greatest of matchups versus the Steelers that give up the 12th least amount of fantasy points to running backs on the season. But right now, him and Foreman are most likely in a split. And depending the game as well, if they're down early and often here, they're going to be thrown a lot, and Hubbard's going to be in on those passing downs. Mediocre matchup in week 15. And a guy who had a good workload, he's available right now in 67% of fantasy leagues. The next running back, Marlon Mack of the Denver Broncos. So we saw Mike Boone go down in this ball game, and Latavius Murray not do much. For Marlon Mack, he housed a big screen, 56 yards and a touchdown. So Mack, a 66-yard touchdown he housed. Now, I know the workload wasn't much, but he's a guy to keep in consideration in deeper leagues. Available 97% of leagues. So in that week 14 ball game versus the Chiefs, 3 carries, 15 yards with 2 catches, 62 yards, and a touchdown. So right now, Latavius Murray's still the leader in the backfield, but we know Mike Boone's banged up. And Marlon Mack, he might be a change of pace back, or even a guy who could steal some goal line work possibly from Latavius Murray. But like I said, more of a deeper league ad, and he's available in 97% of leagues. Next guy is Travis Homer of the Seattle Seahawks. So Homer right now available in 62% of fantasy leagues here. He was the workhorse in that ball game here for the Seahawks. But obviously Kenneth Walker, he was missed big time, and the Seahawks fell with a bad loss 30-24 to the Panthers. So Travis Homer in his return after missing the one game, he didn't do much of anything in week 14 versus the Panthers. 9 carries, 26 yards, 2 catches, 8 yards. So right here, week 15, a very tough matchup versus the Niners that give up the least amount of fantasy points to running backs on the season. But hey, if Kenneth Walker's still out, Travis Homer's the starting running back here, and he's a guy that's at least got to be rostered in 12-team leagues or deeper. The next guy is Zamir White of the Vegas Raiders. So right here, Josh Jacobs, we know he's banged up with the hand injury. We know he's banged up with the calf from a few weeks ago. And Zamir White will be the next man up over there for the Raider team. Available in 97% of fantasy leagues. So Zamir White, we know had a good college career. And even in limited touches this season here, he looks like he could be almost an every down back. So right now, as a handcuff or a guy to take a flyer on if you don't think Jacobs will be healthy this week here, Zamir White would be the guy for the first and second down work over there in Vegas, with Amir Abdullah sprinkling on third down. But he's available right now in 97% of fantasy leagues. And the final running back I looked at on the wire this week's Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers. So Mason, he's the next man up over there for this 49er team, and he's available right now in tons of fantasy leagues at 87%. So if Christian McCaffrey with his big workload and a lot of catches out of the backfield goes down, Mason will be a lottery ticket and the next man up here for fantasy owners in the playoffs. So the last few games, while taking the Elijah Mitchell role here for Jordan Mason. Week 13 versus Miami, 8 carries, 51 yards. And week 14 versus Tampa here, 11 carries, 56 yards in the blowout victory. So week 15, a great matchup at the Seahawks that give up the second most fantasy points to running backs on the season. If Mason could get a little bit of more of an expanded role and eat into McCaffrey's workload a little more here, he definitely can have fantasy value as a flex option as well for the remainder of the season. So right now available in 87% of fantasy leagues here is Mason. So a few running backs I looked at on the waiver wire for week 15 of the fantasy football season.